Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Oh my God, I'm going to take this thing off. I'm laughing because the picture was me like adjusting my hat, and I just decided to leave it because just to bring a little lightness to this channel. This channel can be pretty heavy. Hi to my live viewer, and so yeah, a lot of the problems in the Neo-Advaita satsangs is just simply lack of vocabulary, really lack of information, but lack of vocabulary. And one of the key things that's missing in Neo-Advaita, that's just a key component of traditional Advaita. Ramana didn't talk about it so much, but is the three-body model. And the three-body model says that the relative this, the relative person, and that's the thing, traditional Advaita doesn't mind acknowledging the fact that there is a relative person. Neo-Advaita is like, no, Neo-Advaita is like scared of the person. And so it's forced to like deny, no, there is no person, there is no personality. And denial just never really works out so well, especially not in non-duality. But Advaita Vedanta is very fine with, Neo-Advaita is like, let's deny all the relative aspects of reality. Let's deny personality, individuality. Let's deny the world. Let's deny emotions, feelings. Let's deny character, and let's just hop right to self-inquiry. Whereas Advaita Vedanta is like, hey, there's actually two realities. There's the absolute, and there's the relative. And ultimately, these two things are one. And but most people need to learn a little bit about the relative to hang out in the absolute and to live in the experience that the relative is the absolute. And so one of the beautiful ways Advaita Vedanta does that is they have a model for, okay, well, we know what the absolute self is. Neo-Advaita has like talked that to death. It's like beat us up with it. You are the self. You are consciousness. You are that. You are just consciousness. Like, okay, thanks, Neo-Advaita. Neo-Advaita educates us great about the destination. It just gives no reliable way to get there. Now, Advaita says, okay, but what is this relative thing that's on this journey to that? And what is the journey there? Neo-Advaita's answer is just inquire, or you already are that. You don't need to do anything. Whereas Advaita Vedanta says, well, actually, you need to understand this thing that you take yourself to be. And, so they have the three-body model. The body, which I think is called the Mana Maya. I'm not even going to use the Sanskrit. The body, the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. The physical body is easy. The causal body is easy. It's the unconscious. It's that which we're not able to be aware of, and we're not actually able to influence a lot, but really which drives the whole show. It's actually kind of fascinating. And we have the subtle body, ding, 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 which is what we need to put our attention on. So the subtle body in traditional Advaita view contains different layers of the mind. It contains the ego. They have a very sophisticated map of personality. But for the sake of Advaita Vedanta, for the sake of Vedanta, what you need to know about is the sense of doership, the ego, and the gunas in terms of the quality of mind. And so here's where Neo-Advaita falls short, is someone says, oh, I'm feeling upset. And the Neo-Advaita teacher is like, who is it that feels upset? They like attack the person. Whereas Advaita Vedanta might say, well, what are you upset about? And get to a little bit of diagnosis to be like, okay, well, that's an imbalance of rajas guna in the mind, and you need to deal with that. Like, oh, is this a momentary upset? Then it's no big deal. If it's a momentary upset, you can inquire who is aware of that. If this is an ongoing pattern, it's indicative of one of the gunas being out of balance. And I've talked a lot about the gunas. To anyone who's new, please look up the gunas online. And you need to deal with it, because self-inquiry will fail against the gunas. And in my own direct experience, and I've seen this happen to other people, it'll actually make things worse, because self-inquiry going up against tamas and rajas guna. Now, self-inquiry is to pacify sattva guna, but it's not meant to pacify a systemic imbalance of tamas or rajas guna. A momentary flare-up, self-inquiry is great. An ongoing pattern, because see, Advaita Vedanta looks at the relative self the way a doctor would. Advaita Vedanta, they don't give up and just give. It's not just giving lectures. It's actually having a relationship with a teacher who teaches you about your relative self to get you, and how to navigate your relative self, because one of the meaning of gunas is ropes, as in ropes that bind. And without that, then the self is bound. Not technically bound, but in our capacity to access it, it's bound. So just lacking that vocabulary, Neo-Advaita can't even have a realistic conversation about who is it or what is it that, when someone says, well, the experience of the self comes and goes. Neo-Advaita can't even have a conversation about that. Whereas Advaita Vedanta can say, okay, your subtle body needs some work. Let's diagnose which of the gunas is out of balance. There's some other tools. That's the one that I'm most familiar with. What habit of action, emotion, or thinking is getting in the way, and address that. Again, if it's a momentary flare-up, then self-inquiry is a great tool. If it's, James Schwartz uses an amazing phrase, when the subtle body becomes riddled with one of the gunas, then self-inquiry is not going to work. And again, in my direct experience, if you want to use self-inquiry to try and deal with, to put it in plain English, to deal with a very unbalanced, unhealthy personality, it took me to the brink of suicide. And I'm not the only one. So there's a little vocabulary. So that's all really technical. I prefer the Christian mystic of body, soul, and spirit. Spirit being the self, the absolute. Soul being this place that's kind of in between, this sort of relative thing which can connect to spirit or can connect to the flesh. The soul. And that's the thing. Neo-Advaita can't even have a meaningful conversation of, well, okay, I am the self. Why am I not experiencing that? Advaita Vedanta gives a very simple answer. Because your subtle body is turned away from the self, and it's turned towards itself, or it's turned towards objects. And so it needs to be retrained. But before it needs to be retrained, it needs to get in shape. And hence you have karma yoga and bhakti yoga, and to a lesser extent, raja yoga. So most of what I just shared came from my understanding of James Schwartz's book, The Essence of Enlightenment, which he has available online for free. And a lot of it's my own direct experience. And also studying Ramana Maharshi's Upadesha Swaram, the only thing he wrote, everything else was other people writing it down and arranging it to suit their own personal agendas. That is a step-by-step process towards enlightenment. And thing is, I'm not so. I just, when I talk about, my thing, when I talk about Advaita Vedanta, I'm just doing it to be of service. I have no interest in Advaita Vedanta anymore. I'm very much into Dvaita. Dvaita, am I pronouncing that right? Qualified non-duality. And an actual, I mean, if I ever have time, I'll dive into really, really authentic, like back to Shankara authentic. Because Shankara was a tantric and he was totally into the goddess. Not only did Shankara say that the absolute and the relative are one and the same, he completely honored the goddess, which is the relative half of reality. He was a goddess worshiper. He was a tantric and a siddha. So what I've been talking about is kind of how people understand Shankara. And yeah, my real interest is in recovering, having had a couple really bad guru-disciple relationships, and helping other people recover from that. It's soul-shattering. Our self can't be shattered, but that's the subtle body can be really fucked up. And a bad guru-disciple relationship, really shattering, not the absolute self, but the relative self. Wow. Very bad. And it's the ultimate betrayal of trust. It's part of why I do this channel. Part of why I do this channel is just to remind myself of the nonsense of Neo-Advaita, because it's an addiction. It gets people high. It got me high. And like any addiction, it's deadly. Addiction is a denial. It's a coping strategy that over time requires more and more and more extreme to suppress things. So yeah, I have a passion for it, and I love Ramana. It breaks my heart to see his teaching so distorted. And I guess because I've made it out. I'm still alive. Still have a lot of work to do to get myself back in balance, but don't know if I ever will. I mean, I have absolute hope and trust that I will, but I just may be on a relative level kind of broken for the rest of this life. And I've actually made peace with that. Made peace with that possibility. I haven't decided, that's how it's going to be. Because the thing is that's why I love Advaita is it's all about surrender and trust. And Ramana talked about surrender. And that's really my path. That's where my real passion is. In the path of loving God and being humble before God and surrendering. And Ramana said that there's only really two ways to overcome destiny, and that's to break free of suffering, and that's one of them. Self-inquiry is one, and the other was surrender. He talked about it less, but he very much affirmed the power of that path. So, all right, dear ones, hope this video is helpful. I've disabled comments for most videos here, and though if you want to leave comments, let's see. I wonder. There's a little tab discussion, and I just want to be really clear. I'm done arguing people. If you want to come here and argue with me, go fuck off. Like, sorry, I've had like 90 plus arguments with people, and every single time one of two things happen. The person admits I'm right, or the person sees I'm right, sees they can't argue with me, and then they delete the whole thread. So I'm just kind of done with it. If you want to respectfully disagree, I'm open to that. And I've had one person, thank you. I think I've had two people, just been like, a couple of people have respectfully said, hey, you might want to think about this, or have you heard about this? If you can express your disagreement in a respectful way, be happy to dialogue and learn with you. I'm not in, I don't live in Sahaj Samadhi. I don't live in effortless Samadhi yet. And so there's things for me to learn. But if you want to argue or criticize or give me advice, like just for the sake of God, just go fuck yourself or something. Like go somewhere else, please. Save us both the time and energy. Um, I've been there, done that. I'm not out to. I'm here to help my own recovery from fake Advaita Vedanta and help others. And if you're here for any other reason, then go somewhere else. There's lots of channels, lots of channels, lots of yeah. Enough about that. Um, Advaita says that just like Advaita, that God lives within you. There's something perfect and pure within you, and I've experienced that to be true. I know that to be true, and so that's a lot of talking. Let's do a little sitting. Let's tune into that divinity that lives within us, that's all around us. One of my favorite ways to connect to the divine is to observe my body with the intention to receive that grace, that divine, whether you call it Shaktipat or grace or love of God, that both lives within us and is all around us. If the mind's going every which way, I recommend observing the breath and counting as you breathe in, counting as you breathe out, or just repeating a mantra with each breath. Welcome to our live viewer. Just doing a little meditation, receiving the grace of God. It's very simple. Just you can imagine that you're under a waterfall, that waterfall being the love of God, the grace of God, the presence of God. We're always under that waterfall. Just taking some time to become conscious of the truth that we're swimming in a sea of God and that we're intimately linked to it. The way I do that is observing my body with the intention. I go deep within the core of my soul, my spirit, the self, as they would say in Advaita Vedanta. And I have the intention to receive that grace. Obviously, the self doesn't need that grace, but that grace then removes the obscurations. Thank you so much for joining in. Thanks to my currently one live viewer, and wow, anyone who watched all the way to the end. It's the day before Halloween, so let's all have fun. I mean, according to all the systems of Vedanta, Advaita or Dvaita, we're all always wearing a costume until we're fully united with our true self. We're always wearing a mask. So let's go do it and have fun tomorrow night. Take care, beautifs. Beautifuls. Beautifuls, full of beauty. You. Much love.